those of you who followed from the main 6++ channel, you might have seen that we had a tale of 6-ish wargamers initially. First month, that went pretty well. We all managed to get a test model, had a bit of a talk about what we were expecting to do, sort of what our goals were. That was great. Month 2, we dropped to, I think, 3 people. Maybe there's a little bit more. There's a little bit more contribution. But we had a few people, managed to get a good 500 points painted, which is a solid amount if you're trying to get an army put together. This month, we're down to 2. So we thought, let's just scratch that. This is going to be the new monthly hobby roundup, basically, where anyone on the channel who has done any hobby gets to pontificate about what they've done, why they've done it, what they like about it. More focused on the modelling side of things, which I think is really nice. Obviously, coming from playing 40k, I spend more time playing the game than thinking about painting. It's been quite nice to dive into the hobby angle of things with Old World. I've really enjoyed doing some conversions, spending a little bit more time painting some of the stuff. Obviously, I had to paint most of an army quite quickly. But yeah, I'm looking forward to doing a lot more conversions, a lot more interesting painting, and just making the most of treating Old World as a hobby instead of just a competitive game. We'll see if we get to that bit as well. So before this month, I'd converted up a Morgrunter, which is the big Black Orc chariot. It became a Black Orc chariot with a big boss on top, BSB. But it's just an AOS model, huge pig basically, with 3 models stood on top of it. I'd done that already. I'd done 12 Black Orcs as well. Then I had some beasts, or boys, I should say. So that was all I had coming into the start of this month, or really coming into the start of, the week leading up to my event. So this month I've managed to achieve 4 more Black Orcs, nice and easy to do, just sort of fit in there as well. A couple of Goblin characters, 1 big boss with a great weapon, and we've got a Night Goblin Shaman there as well. Really characterful models. Also really cheap compared to what I'm used to seeing, Games Workshop prices. It was, I think, 3 characters for £14 or £16, which is, by Games Workshop standards, very reasonable. I was pleased about that. Then models that were less well priced, I had to get my Night Goblins before the new ones were released, or I should say the old ones, the 6th edition models, I think they are. But the weekend they came out was the weekend that I was playing an event. So I got 3 boxes of those, the Gloomspite gits, I think they're called. Made 20 of them with bows and 29 of them with spears and shields. Some pictures here. Even though they've not got as good a reception as the older models, I really like them. I think I might like them more than the older ones. They're a little bit less goofy, but they've still got enough goofiness in there. They're still quite classic models. Also really easy to paint. Very sort of, not a lot of dimensions to them. The cloaks were surprisingly, I think, 3 or 4 steps. I painted them, sprayed them grey, did an undershade, or a dry brush underneath. You'd call it slap shop, but it's not time for that rant. And then some contrast over the top, and then I think I went back and did another layer of dry brushing, and then just an Agrax Earthwade wash. This army was just fueled by Agrax Earthshade. I think I went through 3 or 4 of the paint pots of it. Great paint, makes it all look a lot better, a lot more cohesive. Elemental Asum Shaman with a Wyvern there. Really enjoyed this conversion. I've said this on another video, I think it might have been on the podcast. I used to be, when I was doing conversions, it was to try and save money, so I picked up the endless spells from the, what are they called? The Fire Dwarves from Age of Sigmar. So I bought that. It was 25 quid. Managed to find a shaman for £9, I think it was, in my local Element Games. That was cool. And then I was like, I need some wings. I had a Hive Tyrant that I was like, I could just pull this apart. I've actually got 1 new on sprue, so I measured that out. And wings were too big, so I bought a Demon Prince for £50. And now I've just got a Demon Prince that's kicking around. But while I'm sort of spinning my heels on what to do hobby-wise next for Old World, I might just put that together and paint it, to be honest. It's a really nice model, so it'd be cool to have an excuse to do something a little bit different. But yeah, so the theme behind this model here was it's an elementalism caster, so in theory it's summoning sort of like an elemental dragon out of the ground. don't think about it too hard. Obviously, the wyvern flies, and this looks like it's made out of stone, but it's fine. Magic. Don't, like I say, don't think about it. Then there's some fanatics as well. The kit only comes with 5, and they're really nice models, actually. One of the few times that I don't prefer the older models to the new ones. Pretty okay with these. I really enjoyed painting these, surprisingly. I thought they were going to be just more of the same, basically. There's not a lot more elements to them other than the poses, but I really enjoyed painting them. So number 6 is the night goblin that's just throwing up that comes in the set, and then half a spiked ball as well, because it only comes with 5, so got to make the most of it there. War machines. The Doom Divers. The Doom Divers are very basic paint jobs. I did very little on them. They were the last things I painted, and I was running very low on time. Fantastic models, though, so probably going to go back and touch those up a little bit. Maybe I'd like to do something more interesting with the bases as well, because right now it's just sort of like a mud field, which is fine, but it's not particularly evocative. But then I've got the 2 bolt throwers. These are the Cruel Boys bolt throwers. So obviously I took off the Cruel Boys and replaced all the sort of non-orc and goblin bits with more orc and goblin-y bits. So I've got one that's fully night goblin and one that's got a savage Orc on there as well. I had a lot of fun with that. And then the orc bow boys. I wanted to use the classic models, almost bought the box, realised that the box that was out at the time didn't have bows in it. It was just a, sword and, I think, double swords maybe. But, yeah, so the Savage Orcs as a box set was a great alternative for that one. Really enjoyed putting those together as well. They're newer models, but still have the same feel. These are also some of the last things that I painted, so they're definitely some of the things that I'm least proud of paint scheme-wise, so likely go back and do something to those at some point, but to be honest, I was pretty underwhelmed with them in games, so they might just sit in a box for a while and be revisited at some point in the future. But yeah, overall, really happy with the amount I managed to get done this month. I think something like 1650, 1700 points, because the things that I painted before this month, some of them didn't end up being used. But yeah, that's this month, and next month we'll have to see. I've got some ideas. I'm considering doing an Undead Bretonian list, so just using all of the Vampire Counts models, but playing it as Bretonians. I have thought about doing Wood Elves with a couple of Treeman Ancients. I think that'll be a lot of fun. Also, I do have a Demon Prince that might just be a hobby stopgap. Something to do. Really looking forward to that. Also got a 40k event that I've got to prep for. So that will take up a chunk of my time. But yeah, I think that's it for me.
Hi everyone, and welcome to my update for the Quest for the Hobby episode. I have made some more progress on my vampire counts over the last month. Not quite as much progress as I was hoping to make. I'd hoped to, by this month, have got 20 skeletons and a Terrorgeist done. I have been running some 40k events and doing some exciting 6++ stuff, so didn't quite make as much progress as hope. But Terrorgeist is built, undercoated, and is on the way to being painted. Hopefully an image of her will come up now with how far I've got. I think you'll agree she's an absolutely incredible sculpt. Obviously not a Games Workshop one. One I've got off a creator on Etsy called Ganon 3D. Definitely worth checking them out. They've got loads of amazing stuff. I just absolutely love the pose, the way she's like kind of leaning down. I do like the addition of the second head. I do like that as well. I think just feels a little bit different. And she just looks absolutely terrifying. So I'm really hoping the paint job will eventually do the incredible sculpt some justice. I've bought from the same creator. I've bought a zombie dragon for Alicia von Carstein to ride. And similar kind of obviously shape and structure to the creature, but it's kind of actually kind of like leaning up on a wall rather than kind of facing down. So I'm really looking forward to putting that one together and getting some paint on that. But I do need to try and be a bit more disciplined than I've currently been and get another chunk of skeletons done. Otherwise, I'm just going to have an army of painted monsters and nothing else. So you can hold me to this. I will get 20 skeletons done before I paint any more exciting monsters, because then I'll have 40 skeletons finished there, which I think is a good chunk, and the 10 Grave Guard and the Blood Knights and the Necromancer and the Terrorgeist, hopefully. So we'll be in a really strong position for the army. This month I have managed to get a couple of games in. So they're only small games. So I played against the Bretonians at 1200 points. And I played against the Ogre Kingdoms at 1000 points. So very much kind of learning games. So they'll be my third and fourth games of the old world. You've had the fortune or misfortune to watch my second ever game of old world, where I played Ed on a battle report. I hope I didn't get too many rules wrong, but I think I held my own okay. Obviously, I know I lost, but I hope I held my own in a respectable way for those Vampire Count fans. Into the Bretonians, that game ended in a draw. I was able, I think, to well make use of the leadership debuffs and the terror from the Blood Knights and the Terrorgeist to scare off all of the peasants and men at arms. Basically, they all end up just running away through terror and disappearing off the board like that. However, I just couldn't kind of get to grips with the Grail Knights and the guy flying around on the bloody griffin thing. They just ate their way through my skeletons, and just found that quite challenging. I was able to keep skeletons alive long enough with the Necromancer that he wasn't able to get a huge many points from them, as there were still enough skeletons left at the end. But I wasn't really getting to grips with the knights. It just kept away from the Terrorgeist. Was able to outmaneuver him, and I just need to position a bit better. I think I put the Terrorgeist too far away from the main lines. I was worried about it getting shot, and he only had bowmen, so I don't think I really needed to bother being so worried. I did, similar to the battle report with Ed, I did lose the Blood Knights really easily. It was a Plague of Rust and Ruby Ring combo, and that's obviously the second time in a row where basically best part of a 300-point unit just gets obliterated straight off the bat. There was one Blood Knight left alive, so I just went and hid it behind a hill for the rest of the game. So it wasn't able to completely pick up the unit, but still, that was it just kind of neutered a big chunk of my army. And actually, in the kind of skeleton horde, they don't do damage, so you really need something like the Blood Knight or the Terrorgeist to get into those flanks and start munching their way through stuff. Otherwise, the skeletons, albeit they don't die, they just kind of sit there, but they're not also doing anything in return. So you just end up in a very kind of drawy match. So I really need to improve my placement of the Blood Knights, improve how I position them, how I use them, how I move them. So a bit to think on there. Not 100% sure how I get the best out of them yet, but we're still learning. We're still just picking up on the rules and make sure I get everything right, and try not to make too many mistakes. So I'm sure the tactics will come in time. The Ogre game, that went a lot better. Very similar list, but we're only down to 1000 points, so I didn't have the Terrorgeist this time. I just had the Skeletons, Graveguard, and the Blood Knights, basically, with the Necromancer. The battle line in the middle performed exactly as it had done against Bretonians. It stood in the middle and died slowly enough that my opponent, even on the charge with his ogre charges, wasn't able to really kind of finish off many units very quickly. Which meant this time around, where he didn't have huge amounts of range damage or huge amounts of magic damage, I was able to get the Blood Knights into position this time. They went round the flanks, took down a unit of Mournfang cavalry, and then basically was able just to kind of roll through the rear and the flanks of the ogre battle line and just kind of crumble them down. The fact that the Blood Knights, I give them supernatural horror, so they cause terror, was really, really useful. Managed to get a couple of the leadership debuffy spells in the necromancy lore off, and then even though those ogre models are really, really difficult to kill, I just didn't need to. I was able to win combat through combat res, taking away their flanks, and use the leadership debuffs to basically make them flee and then run them down. So my opponent lost the big chunky ogre balls unit with the 2 characters in it, but just being run down by blood knights. So the skeletons pinned them, the blood knights charged them, and then that was enough to kind of send them packing. Which I know my opponent didn't have huge amounts of range stuff to kill the blood knights. It does, however, highlight how much damage they can do and how powerful they can be if I get that positioning right. So I felt a lot better about my use of that unit after that game. But clearly they are going to be a primary target for any opponent that I face. So I need to just keep, as I say, keep thinking on how I position them, how I use them, and how best they are to make the most use of their damage output that they can do, and their ability to get around things. So I feel like I'm getting the hang of the rules a bit better now. I'm really struggling with the layout in the book. Just thinking things like the kind of the psychology side of things. So, um, doing break checks, and then what happens when they flee? What direction do they flee in? It's in, as anyone that's played will know, it's in 3 or 4 different places in the book. So trying to work out what order to do everything in, and then which direction things run in, when I roll my dice to chase, when they move, when they don't move, what happens when they impact a friendly unit, what happens when they flee through an enemy unit, all that sort of stuff. It could just be in one place in the book. So I could just work out what happens at the end of a fight, because we had a couple of slightly more complex combats that were happening quite close to each other with kind of flanking units and challenges going on. So had all that stuff been in the same place in the book, that would have made our kind of our experience a lot easier. Both of my opponents also very new to the new game, so I'm sure we got plenty of things wrong, but I'm hoping we kind of worked it through, and that was the joy of playing at kind of 1,000 points, is that we had an evening in the pub, and was just able to slowly work our way through both games without too much stress that we were going to go on too long. So that just gave us the chance to actually just get through those rules and try and make sure we were doing it right. But as I say, I think I'm getting the hang of things now. Got another game next month coming up into the High Elves, which I'm really looking forward to. It looks a really nasty combination at 1,200 points. So, and obviously they'll play quite similar to me. It's got kind of big bricks of spears in the middle with stuff that's going to come in on the flank and try and make the mess. And obviously, I am conscious of the combat res causing the crumbling. At these lower points value, I don't have the battle standard bearer to start taking D3 off the models I'm losing. So if I get flanked, as happened against the Bretonians, a skeleton unit will just crumble basically immediately. And I think there was one occasion where I was literally just down to one last skeleton left, which I was able to then resurrect the unit, but can very, very quickly just go incredibly wrong if someone gets the jump on you. So it will be really interesting to see how we can play that out. And I think by the time we record the next podcast, I'll have played that game as a high elf, so I might speak about it on the main episode, or you'll hear about it in my next monthly update. And yeah, we'll see how we go with Alicia von Carstein. She's on the zombie dragon, so she's not going to be painted just yet. So just Matilda the Bony is making her way through various foes and learning how to raise more skeletons, so that when Alicia von Carstein finally decides to wake up from her millennia long slumber, she will be ready to claim more souls.